Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto and Yugao Were in Love with Each Other Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. 6 months had passed since Naruto learned the hard way of the ninja by killing one missing nin from Konoha. After that event, it took Naruto almost 3 days to get back to normal. Until then, he wouldn't mutter a single word to his sensei, but Jiraiya never pressed the issue, knowing that Naruto would have to deal with it on his own. In the end, Naruto came clean to Jiraiya about his fear of being compared with the Kyuubi inside of him, but then he calmed down and understood that being a ninja sometimes means being ready to take lives. He hadn't just grown emotionally but psychically too, growing up a few inches in height. His muscles were now ripped because of the resistance seals. Also, Naruto's training only increased. Surprisingly, both Naruto's speed and strength nearly doubled. Some time ago he had to stop using the restriction seals simply because he was already used to using them. Now he had to settle for weights like Lee and Guy so that his speed could increase in time. He now managed to give Jiraiya a run for his money in straight-out taijutsu match, and that was saying something about his training. His training regimen was going nicely since his taijutsu portion was almost completed. Of course, after that, he and Jiraiya would spar on occasion, but Naruto's taijutsu was now on par with a high-level chunin, varying on low junin level. Now, because of Naruto's regimen, Naruto was learning about genjutsu, or rather what it takes to break one at least. Jiraiya learned a long time ago that when Naruto's high chakra capacity gives an advantage in both ninjutsu and taijutsu, but he just couldn't use genjutsu effectively. The reason was simple. Genjutsu requires almost perfect chakra control to be able to use it, and it consists of using a steady flow of chakra and invading the opponent's chakra system, thus beginning the illusion. But as much as Naruto practices his chakra control, he simply has too much chakra to be able to control it effectively up to the point of being able to perform genjutsu. However, that didn't mean that genjutsu should be a weakness for him. Learning how to disrupt the chakra flow was vital to keep the technique from doing any major harm on the ninja's mind and chakra flow. Right now, Jiraiya was taking Naruto once again to a little canal that crossed the village where they were staying. Okay Naruto, now that the taijutsu portion is over, genjutsu is now the next issue. As you know, though, your chakra capacity doesn't allow you to perform genjutsu, so this will be reduced to learning how to dispel genjutsu effectively. As you know or don't know, genjutsu techniques affect the user's chakra flow, thus tempering with all 5 senses depending on the technique and the genjutsu user's will. So, there are 2 ways of disrupting the technique. The first one, and I believe is the most effective, is to disrupt your chakra flow, said Jiraiya, before looking at Naruto and smile upon seeing his puzzled look. Aro-sensei, I only understand English, so please explain it to me in said language, said Naruto, earning a snort from Jiraiya, who then explained it better. Disrupting your chakra flow is actually the first step, but the other part I'll explain it later. Now, in order to disrupt your chakra flow, you just need to simply stop the flow of your chakra. Imagine you're standing on water. You're using chakra to even its flow below your feet, right? Well, imagine you simply stopping the flow of chakra. What will happen? Asked Jiraiya. That's easy. You fall in the water, responded Naruto, wondering why he need to answer such a stupid question. Right. Then the next step is to apply an even stronger chakra, thus disrupting the genjutsu technique, explained Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto before Jiraiya continued. Of course, just explaining to you is easy, but when you get to practice it, you'll see it's tougher. Don't worry, though, we'll be practicing a lot of genjutsu disrupts and then, I'll be using you as my target. I'll be hitting you with every genjutsu that I know and you must disrupt it at any cost. Got it? Explained Jiraiya, earning a contemplative nod from Naruto, who afterwards crossed his arms while trying to digest the information. Upon seeing this, Jiraiya smiled at his pupil. Every time Naruto didn't get the idea right away, he would accept the explanation and then try to elaborate it inside his head, thus trying to explain what needed to be done. Right now, the art of illusions was a foreign concept to the blonde, not only because it was indeed a hard subject to learn, but also because he truly didn't show much interest in the field. The theory itself is complicated enough for Naruto not to use in the midst of a fight, so just like the pervert said, he would just learn how to dispel the illusion, instead of hoping to be able to use it effectively. Now, as he was processing the information inside his head, Naruto was thinking of the concept behind disrupting genjutsu that, according to Jiraiya, it consisted of disrupting the flow of chakra and then re-establishing it with a surge, thus overcoming the opponent's chakra. Problem was that if Naruto wouldn't be able to overcome the opponent's chakra, the procedure wouldn't help. Ero-sensei, I was wondering about something. You said that after disrupting the chakra flow, I have to re-establish it with a surge, thus overpowering the opponent's chakra, but what can I do if the enemy's chakra is more powerful than mine? Asked Naruto, to which Jiraiya nodded and explained. Indeed, some genjutsu masters managed to overcome the dispelling technique, so it would be useless to use it. In that case, there are two other alternatives. One of them you could use when you're alone against someone, but I wouldn't use it if I were you, said Jiraiya, earning a look in confusion from Naruto, before he elaborated further. Immeasurable pain enables the illusion to fade almost instantly, but the cost is way too high. Therefore I'd say it's forbidden, explained Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto, who then asked from the next alternative that didn't involve sticking a kunai on his thigh. Well, the next alternative is using a foreign chakra to invade your body and end the genjutsu. So, in other words, you'd need an ally in battle for that, explained Jiraiya, hearing a snort afterwards from Naruto. So, basically, if the first alternative doesn't work, I'm basically screwed and would have to depend on someone else to aid me. Great, said Naruto with bare sarcasm, but Jiraiya simply smiled and acknowledged Naruto's blunt expression. Don't worry much about it, Naruto. After we train genjutsu, you'll know almost instantly that someone is casting on you, having even better chances of breaking it. Also, genjutsu masters decreased since the last war, so apart from the Uchiha, there won't be much genjutsu users, explained Jiraiya, but he knew Naruto wouldn't even hear the rest. Some time ago, Naruto declared war against what was left of the Uchiha clan. Sasuke almost killed him because of selfish reasons, and Itachi is after the Kyuubi living within him. I have to be prepared in case either Sasuke or Itachi uses a genjutsu on me. I heard that Itachi has the supreme genjutsu that's impossible to break. Is it true? Asked Naruto, earning a nod from Jiraiya. There are few things that are impossible these days, and Itachi's Tsukiyomi is impossible to break. To beat him, you have to stop resorting on your eyes to fight, or either find a way to avoid direct eye contact. Such genjutsu do not even require a strong mind either. You enter an alternative world where he controls everything, and trust me, he knows how to break anyone, like he managed to break Kakashi's mind. You do remember that only Tsunade was able to heal him, don't you? Asked Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto. So, how can I hope to go against him if he could simply look at me and I'm finished? Snarled Naruto, since he didn't know the answer. Facing Itachi alone was one thing he wouldn't ever do. Well, Naruto, let's focus on today, alright? You are miles away from having the strength needed to face him. We'll train your genjutsu abilities, okay? Asked Jiraiya, to which Naruto nodded as they continued to walk towards the little river. A Takigakure . Unlike many hidden villages, Takigakure was considered the invisible city simply because it was virtually impossible for someone who wasn't a villager to know where the city was located. For this reason, that their shinobi placed one condition for hosting their first Chunin exams. Also, it served to be the first phase of the exams, since in order for the teams to arrive, they must find their way through the mountain in order to reach the village. The problem was that because the caves inside the mountain had so much earthquakes, the pathways that lead to the village would change, thus protecting them from enemy invasions. That being said, only those highly experienced in the shinobi arts would be able to progress to the next part of the exam. In the village's arena, only 5 teams managed to pass the pathways from the 20 that tried. Of course, the Chunin hopefuls signed a waiver, so the village would be safe from some old beings from some village's council blaming Takigakure for deliberately killing their genin. Sakura, Shino, Kiba, Tenten, Neji and Lee were waiting for their matches to start, as they were watching Asuna genin battling against one from Kiri. Due to clan circumstances, both Hinata and Ino were unable to participate, and since Ino couldn't go, Tsunade couldn't find a team to place Choji in. Ever since Naruto left the village, the Konoha 9 trained themselves to the brick of exhaustion. Their goal was to pass the next Chunin exams at all cost. Sakura studied under both Tsunade and Shizune and was already considered a prodigy on the medic field. Plus, the fact that both her agility and strength nearly quadrupled. A couple months prior to the Chunin exams, she managed to master Tsunade's taijutsu technique and even managed to use to break a couple of boulders that were meant to end her team's life in the caves. Also, since she filled Hinata's place in Team 8, Kurenai managed to teach her a couple of useful genjutsu techniques for her to learn. The crimson-eyed woman was astonished at Sakura's level of chakra control and understood why she perked Tsunade-sama's interest. Of course, she didn't know that it was Naruto who asked Tsunade to accept Sakura, but still it was commendable. Shino and Kiba, after the Suna invasion, turned to their parents for more advanced family techniques, managing to learn quite a few before the Chunin exams date. Neji and Lee helped Tenten with her training with weapons, and her accuracy was now better than most Junin in Konoha. Now, however, was the real test to see if they trained hard enough to earn the title of Chunin. Looking at the arena, the genin from Suna focused Fuden chakra in a kunai and threw it at his enemy. The kunai was instantly compared to an arrow that pierced the sky straight towards the genin from Kiri. Seeing that dodging would be impossible, the genin from Kiri, which turned out to be a blue-haired beautiful girl called Kaori, used a Mizu Kawarimi water substitution technique, thus escaping the deadly attack. Now turned as a puddle of water, she moved quickly to the other genin's side and materialized once more, before making hand seals, hoping that her opponent wouldn't be able to escape. Suiden Suiryuden no Jutsu, Water Release, Water Dragon Projectile Jutsu. The one from Suna focused upon sensing the chakra usage, but it was too late as the dragon was already hot on his tail, hitting him dead on. The man was unconscious even before hitting on the ground. Up in the stands, all ninjas applauded the girl from her mastery in Suiden ninjutsu, and the Konoha teams were talking amongst themselves. Wow, I wouldn't like to go against her anytime soon, said Kiba, earning a nod from Shino and Sakura, while Lee only displayed his enthusiasm and Neji displayed an arrogant smile. Indeed, getting hit by the water dragon technique is tough, not because of the damage itself, but also the amount of water inside your lungs. I just hope to get a good hit on her before she uses any water techniques, stated Sakura, when the referee shouted the next match. Winner is Kaori from Kiri. The next match is between Haruno Sakura from the Leaf and Takashi from Iwa. Please approach the center of the arena, shouted the referee. The pink-haired girl stiffened for a bit, before breathing slowly, thus easing the tension. Being Tsunade's apprentice, she wasn't sent much to missions, and as a result, she wasn't able to acquire much battle experience. Also, this was the first time Sakura managed to advance to the final stage, so she wasn't used to battling in front of a crowd. So she wasn't so comfortable upon thinking that all eyes were on her. She learned from her sensei Tsunade that the job of the medic nin is often the most dangerous while on a mission. The reason was that they had to concentrate on keeping a constant flow of chakra to heal the wounded while hearing the worst distractions, kind of like explosions and battle cries. She remembered an exercise where she needed to heal someone that suffered a flesh wound from a kunai while fake enemies would use all sorts of flashy jutsus with the purpose of losing her concentration. This is nothing compared to Azumo and Katetsu Senpai's noises while I was trying the exercise. Man, those two could be annoying when they want to be. Now, I must focus on my opponent and my opponent only, thought Sakura as she eyed Takashi in front of her, who in turn was smiling from ear to ear. Probably thinking it would be a easy fight to win, Sakura snorted. With time, her rather active personality only increased, and there were times when she just wanted to punch someone right in the face. Guess, he will lose that smile of his after I break his teeth, Shanaru. Sakura was ready when the referee authorized the fight's beginning, however Takashi found it entertaining and now was laughing even harder. Please girlie, don't make me laugh. How a petite girl like you managed to come this far, it's unknown to me. No matter, you won't go further, that I can assure you, said Takashi, earning a snort from Sakura. She was going to reply, but she was cut short when she heard someone screaming, before turning to see Tenten being held by Lee while cursing quite a number of names on Takashi from diminishing women compared to men. Smiling, she closed her eyes and looked at Takashi, before offering her reply. I feared you'd talk as much as your mouth is big. It's quite annoying if you ask me. Don't insinuate that because I'm a girl, that you will have an easy time beating me. Trust me, when this fight is over, I'm sure you'll change your way of thinking concerning the opposite sex, said Sakura, before seeing Takashi smile and closing his eyes, showing that he didn't believe a single word the girl said. However, a second later, the man would forever think twice before laughing at Kunoichi. Takashi didn't even open his eyes and he immediately felt immeasurable pain on his face. When he opened his eyes, he saw Sakura's fist practically piercing his skull, before his body was somersaulted throughout the stadium. Takashi flipped his body using the momentum, before looking at Sakura with mixed feelings, surprise and anger. He never felt such pain before, and surprisingly, for him, it came from a girl. The reason for his anger was being caught by surprise. Quote, instantly, Takashi smashed his hands on the ground and lifted a huge boulder, before throwing it straight at Sakura. The boulder wasn't as big as to incorporate the entire stadium, so Sakura managed to evade the attack, before throwing 4 shuriken at Takashi. The man sneered at the attack and grabbed a kunai to deflect them all easily. However, Sakura wouldn't let him as she began her series of hand seals for the Dokugiri technique. Takashi cursed the incoming black cloud, but Sakura's plan worked since Takashi forgot about the incoming shuriken, which then pierced his flesh. The man's screams of pain echoed throughout the entire stadium and immediately forfeited the match from fear of dying from blood loss. Seeing this, Sakura ended the poison smoke technique and landed on the ground only to hear the referee voicing her victory. From the furthest corner of the stadium, Sakura could see the judges smiling at her display, which she assumed would qualify her for upgrading her in rank. With Naruto . Obviously oblivious to Sakura's abilities, Naruto was training how to counter genjutsu techniques. More specifically, Naruto and his clones were training how to counter genjutsu. Naruto's clones were perfect for chakra-related techniques since they could transfer knowledge back to the real one. Physical training, though, Naruto had to do on his own, but that he already got covered. Since his chakra capacity only grew with time, Naruto was able to fill the lake with clones, earning a lot of complaints from the local villagers because they couldn't use the lake for their needs like washing their clothes or gather some water for cooking. Seeing this, Jiraiya called all the Narutos to a halt, since the boy also needed the rest, even though the blonde never complained. Oi Naruto, Come here for a second, I want to talk to you, shouted Jiraiya, earning a gathered scream from the blondes, before they began to dispel one by one. It actually took a while for all of them to leave, but the results were instant. What's up, Arrow-sensei? I believe I almost got it covered with the Kage Bunshin training, gloated Naruto, earning a nod in acknowledgement from Jiraiya who, then, took a sit on the ground, ushering Naruto to do the same. Naruto, I've been thinking about your schedule of training and ways to increase your training, said Jiraiya, instantly picking Naruto's interest, before the pervert elaborated. With your Kage Bunshin training, you managed to train close to 4 months' worth of genjutsu. The only issue left is to practice for real. Now, I have a proposition for you, explained Jiraiya. What kind of proposition are you talking? Is it a new jutsu? Asked Naruto, earning a chuckle from Jiraiya, who couldn't help but feel that way upon seeing Naruto's eagerness to become stronger. I'm talking about improving your Rasengan, said Jiraiya, but instead of seeing the usual glimpse in Naruto's eyes, he saw confusion. Arrow-sensei, I've already learned how to use the Rasengan single-handed. What more is there to learn about it? Asked Naruto, earning a snort from Jiraiya. Kid, the Rasengan was the fourth prized technique together with the Hiraishin. For your information, it took him nearly 3 years to create the Rasengan. Do you really think you managed to complete the technique after only using it for a little over 6 months? Using the technique in one hand was actually a handicap you needed to overcome. The power behind your spiraling ball didn't change at all, it just became faster to create. Do you see where I'm going with this? Asked Jiraiya, earning a subtle nod from Naruto. So you're saying that I can control the force of the technique? Asked Naruto, before he saw Jiraiya suddenly extending his arm and create a normal-sized Rasengan. Watch closely, Naruto, said Jiraiya, as he focused on the technique. As he watched, Naruto wondered if he was seeing things as the spiraling sphere was growing in size right in front of him. It didn't take long until the sphere doubled its size. Seeing the astonished look from the blonde, Jiraiya smirked, before explaining the concept behind the technique. Naruto, as you know, to do the Rasengan, both chakra rotation and force are condensed, forming a sphere. So in theory, you need to increase the speed and the force behind the technique while maintaining the sphere shape, explained Jiraiya, before seeing the face of shock from Naruto. He expected as much, since the concept itself took Minato 3 years to create. Sounds difficult, muttered Naruto as he considered the idea inside his mind. No, Naruto, it sounds impossible. But while for others it is nearly impossible, for you is just difficult, seeing as you can use the Kage Bunshin to train. But, let's worry about this another time. For now we'll test genjutsu attacks on you and it will be up to you to break them. Got it? Said Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto. I'll begin with a D-ranked illusion and then I'll increase to AC level. The higher the rank, the more chakra is used, thus you have to overcome the amount of chakra I'm using. Okay? Asked Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto who put up some distance between him and the pervert, before nodding once more. Jiraiya understood the cue and molded his chakra with the simplest illusion, by using the rat seal. Magen Narakumi no Jutsu, demonic illusion, hell viewing jutsu. Instantly, Jiraiya disappeared and instead the demon fox itself appeared before Naruto, showing his hell viewing, aka the Kyuubi's escape. The demon grabbed Naruto with his claws and was about to eat the blonde when Naruto began the sequence for disrupting genjutsu. First, he stopped his chakra flow and then he immediately flooded his chakra coils with his chakra. Kai. Jiraiya appeared in front of him smiling at Naruto from managing to break a D-rank genjutsu. Nicely done, Naruto. Now let's see the higher level illusions. Remember, the higher the technique, it will take an even higher amount of your chakra to overcome my illusion. Now let's see you overcoming a C-ranked illusion. Try increasing your chakra even more than the amount you used for the D-rank genjutsu. Let's go, said Jiraiya, before initiating a different series of hand seals and molding the necessary chakra for Kori Shinshu no Jutsu, Sly Mind Effect Jutsu. Now, Naruto saw the landscape in front of him slowly falling upon him and he wondered what type of illusion this was. He remembered Jiraiya explaining that illusions are powerful allies of a ninja. Since with them, pain, suffering, grief, fear, all negative emotions could be transferred to the opponent and make him suffer everything simultaneously. He once again began the technique needed for disrupting the technique, but since the mountain would take some time to fall down on him, he had time to test how much chakra is needed to overcome a C-rank genjutsu. He used the amount he used for the D-ranked one, but this time it wasn't enough as the mountain kept falling on him. Once again, he began the sequence, only this time he used a larger quantity of chakra, before the real mountain appeared in front of him. Good Naruto, very good, it's okay to use this opportunity to test how much chakra is needed, but in a real fight, be sure to know that the enemy won't give you time to use a counter. When we spar once more, we'll be able to use all three forms of ninja arts and by that time, you'll be able to disrupt the technique before it actually starts. Next one is the B-rank genjutsu, and for now on Naruto, the illusions are powerful enough and susceptible to inflict mental trauma if the mind is weak. Focus on the objective and don't face the illusion like it was real, okay? Asked Jiraiya, to which Naruto nodded, before the pervert began a complicated series of hand seals for Magen Jigoku Guka demonic illusion, Hellfire Jutsu. After Jiraiya stopped with the last seal, Naruto expected for the illusion to begin, except that nothing happened. Jiraiya was just standing there with his eyes focused and with his hands doing the last hand seal. Suddenly, though, the temperature began to increase exponentially. When Naruto looked up, though, he regretted this decision forever as a huge fireball engulfed him in milliseconds, burning his skin. Naruto knew this was an illusion. Hell, he saw Jiraiya doing it, but the pain was so much unbearable that he couldn't focus on the disruption technique. All he could do right now was to scream from the pain. Upon seeing this, Jiraiya had to stop the technique from fear of further damaging Naruto's mind. Naruto was in so much pain that even though Jiraiya broke the illusion, he kept screaming as his memory believed he was still burning to death. It took Jiraiya to shake him a couple of seconds to wake him up from the nightmare that was to burn down. Naruto, are you okay? Answer me, please, shouted Jiraiya, but the only response he got was Naruto shakily nodding his head in acknowledgement. It's better that we stop for now, let's head to where we're staying so you can rest, advised Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto, who had to be carried by the old Sannin since his legs were shaking a lot. Hours later, Jiraiya was staring at the fireplace of the hotel inn they were staying as he remembered the scene before his eyes. The genjutsu that he used on Naruto was only B-ranked chakra-wise, but the effects can lead to an A-ranked illusion if the opponent never faced it before. Jiraiya's concern was that perhaps, Naruto has been training so much that he didn't have the chance to simply wander around a little, take in the sights or even have a bath at the onsen. Jiraiya wondered if he should cut some of the blonde slack. It wasn't that Naruto complained about the overload of training, which he never did, but what happened today was, clearly, a result from fatigue. The pain was unbearable for sure, but Naruto just couldn't train all the time during these 3 years. It wasn't long until Jiraiya heard some footsteps coming his way. He didn't need to turn to see who was making the noise as the person just seated next to the pervert, but for some reason couldn't meet eye to eye. Don't worry about it, Naruto. Genjutsu, sometimes, can deal more damage than ninjutsu and taijutsu combined. The key to a powerful genjutsu is to attack the very mind of the user, making him see, hear or feel things that aren't there. Also, if you don't want to feel prey to it ever again, you'll need to have a strong mind, or strong resolve to settle your differences and grieves in life. The only reason genjutsu is able to affect us so much, is because we can't help but be human, we all have emotions, we all suffer from them. It's inevitable, said Jiraiya as he looked at the blonde's eyes for a while. I know that somewhat, but if I want to fight an Uchiha, I have to get accustomed to genjutsu attacks. I'd be damned if either Sasuke or Itachi just look at me and the fight is over, explained Naruto, earning a nod from Jiraiya. We'll have plenty of time to train you in that area, amongst others as well, so please do not worry. Rest for today and we'll give another try at the genjutsu later on, said Jiraiya, but Naruto's face was clear to Jiraiya. Every time the Sannin mentioned the word rest, Naruto would just shove it and say he needed to train harder. Jiraiya once remembered how he had to use a genjutsu to get the blonde to sleep. Naruto, I'm serious this time. I told you that resting your body after a stressful exercise is imperative. You don't want me to use that technique once more, do you? I'll use it if it means to slow you down somehow, stated Jiraiya, to which Naruto snorted, but said nothing at first. He then turned toward his bed and simply walked for a while, before turning to face Jiraiya. I guess I'll go to sleep, then. Good night, Aro-sensei, said Naruto, to which Jiraiya nodded. Don't worry, Naruto, you'll be stronger in no time. Rest up, kid, and tomorrow we'll take a look at the new Rasengan we talked about, said Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto, who then continued to walk towards his bed. In Konoha . Looking at the ceiling for what seemed like forever, Wanazuki Yugao tried hard to remember what happened for her to be back at the hospital. Didn't matter though to her, as in a matter of seconds, everything that happened in her last S-ranked mission came flooding her mind. She remembered the warlike mission she threw herself in and the number of opponents she faced pretty much alone. She even remembered being hit so much in the ribs that she passed out right there on the field. It was good that she had at least someone to rescue her, or else she wouldn't be alive right now. That was the thing though. Yugao thought oftentimes about what she could do to end her misery, and going through high-risk missions seemed like an honored way to go and in the same time, get to join her lover in heaven. Gecko Hayate died trying to warn Konoha from the impeding sand sound invasion in Konoha, but on the way, he engaged in battle against a sand Junin who used an elemental blade and killed him. At the time, Yugao saw his limp body for a while, but she couldn't cry. After all, she belonged to the most prestigious ninja order in Konoha, but while she couldn't cry throughout the mission, she could at least have some time alone to do that once she goes to sleep alone in his apartment. So many memories of her lover were impregnated throughout her life and personal belongings that she couldn't forget his death and move on with her life. Friends already tried to encourage her into moving on. She even remembered the Hokage advising her into stop getting herself killed all those times, but she just couldn't. Being a strong ninja like herself, eventually the only way for her to vent her frustration was going on mission after mission. Looking to the left, she saw her belongings and got out of bed to collect them. However, because of spending so much time in bed, her entire body ached to no end. Plus her ribs were still hurting. Man, those IWA nins hit hard. I can still feel his feet hitting my stomach hard. I guess I'll have to do some routine missions for the time being and then I can ask for a tougher mission, thought Yugao as she grabbed her cat mask and placed, before opening the door to her room, and disappeared before the nurse could come and check up her health, just like all the other times Yugao had to heal. With Naruto . When the first ray of sunshine entered the room, Jiraiya opened his eyes after a nice drunken sleep. Well, actually, he was already feeling the hangover, but the sleep was fantastic. He was only waiting, though, to hear the same thing he hears all the time. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. There it is, thought Jiraiya as he smiled. Every day, Naruto would wake up sooner and do some light workout by summoning some clones and fight against them in straight taijutsu. Getting up, Jiraiya dressed up and head straight outside to see Naruto fighting off against 10 of his clones. Usually, Jiraiya would be surprised to see such a display of taijutsu, but after seeing for God knows how long, he ceased to be amazed. Naruto with one roundhouse kick followed by one reverse kick on the other side managed to dispel 3 of his clones and another 2 of them were already on his tail, obliging him to use his arms to defend against the barrage of punches that soon followed. However, the best defense is offense, so Naruto kept defending the punches for a while before seeing an opening given by one of the clones, thus aiming a straight punch at the clone's nose, thus dispelling him. The other one was surprised and looked to the smoke next to him, allowing Naruto to land a reverse kick on the last clone's ribs. Looking at the pervert from afar, Naruto dispelled the rest of the clones and ran straight to his teacher. "Good morning, Arrow-sensei," greeted Naruto, but now displaying a much healthier smile which was noted by Jiraiya. "Good morning, Naruto, I see you are already warmed up for today. Let's begin with the Rasengan training, then," said Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto who instantly summoned a couple hundred cage bunchins, before all of them screamed the word, "Ready," in unison. "Good, good, now leave the clones to the Rasengan for now Naruto, I want to try something with you, if I may," said Jiraiya, earning a nod from the real one before he turned to the clones and nodded at them, before turning once again to Jiraiya as the clones began to form the Rasengan and then expand its shape. Jiraiya for his part, smiled at Naruto's large chakra capacity before looking down on the real one. "Naruto, I want to see if you're able to utilize a weapon in combat," stated Jiraiya. "What kind of weapon?" asked Naruto, though the subject was interesting. He had to fight a IWA nin 2 months ago and the man had a bow staff to compete. The image of the opponent blocking all the shadow shuriken made Naruto eager to know about the art of the bow staff. Other weapons, though, weren't that much interesting. He could take care of himself with a kunai or even a nodashi, small sword, but he wouldn't even bother to learn a katana or kodashi. Upon looking at Jiraiya, the man gave the answer. "I have with me here stored either a katana or a bow staff. Which one do you like to learn?" asked Jiraiya, knowing that the answer was obvious. Naruto chose the bow staff, right on the spot. "Good choice, Naruto, I could even teach you my sensei's style of fighting." Sarutobi Hiruzen was considered a master in the art, said Jiraiya, smiling at the boy's choice, but Naruto smiled even further upon realizing just to whom was Jiraiya referring. "You mean to say that I can learn the old man's style? Ain't that sort of clan secret? What if the Sarutobi clan finds out?" asked Naruto, receiving a nod from Jiraiya. "My sensei's bow staff style is free to all those who wishes to learn how to use this weapon Naruto. Besides, he would have gladly taught you in person, in case he knew you wanted to. Now, here is the scroll for you to read before you sleep for later training. Now, join your clones for the Rasengan training," said Jiraiya, to which Naruto nodded, before extending his hands and forming the energy sphere from thin air. In Konoha . The moon started to rise in Konoha as the lights were slowly appearing throughout the village. The stores beginning to close and the bars and restaurants were beginning to open for the lovers, friends and family to frequent. Both civilians and shinobi filled the streets with life and joy as they wandered out places. One Anbu operative, though, wasn't so thrilled to be coming home after 3 months of risked assignments. After leaving the hospital, Yugo's team did some security scouts throughout the village territory before being freed by the Anbu commander since she was still in recovery from the last mission. To say the truth, though, she didn't want to return to her apartment. It was always empty now because of her lover's death and she didn't want to sleep alone. Of course, she slept alone outside the village amongst missions, but it was different since she didn't have to stare at her empty bed where she and her soon-to-be husband shared so many moments together. Sometimes, she would even sleep on the sofa from fear of having nightmares of Hayate's death. The doctor said once that plenty of rest would speed her recovery, but he neglected to take into consideration that Yugao wasn't able to sleep more than 2 to 3 hours before nightmares begin to plague her mind. The neighbors even commented about the fact that Yugao would scream Hayate's name repeatedly after one of the worst nightmares she ever had. I'm tired, but what will happen once I close my eyes? I can't help but want to feel Hayate's body close to me. It was the only thing that comforted me enough to fall asleep, but now he's gone from my life, thought Yugao as she took off her Anbu clothes, revealing a beauty not seen in many kunoichi. It could better be described as a goddess amongst women. Her beautiful purple hair in perfect synchronization with her beautiful brown eyes and her smooth skin. Clearly any men who managed to get a look at her would be thankful just by looking. But she didn't leave it for long, putting some light clothes and tried to sleep early. With Naruto The Rasengan training, surprisingly, took longer than expected. Ever since Naruto began using the Kage Bunshin, nearly 4 hours passed for him to be able to expand the size of the Rasengan. It was without time, though, as a minute later, Naruto would simply pass out from chakra loss. He was able to expand the Rasengan at least 4 times to what he was able to do, and the ball now was twice the size Jiraiya's normal Rasengan appeared. The damage, of course, increased exponentially as Naruto slammed it on a small hill. He managed to create a 10 feet in diameter tunnel all the way to the other side, before passing out in the middle of it. Now, Jiraiya was carrying the blonde back to the hotel with a proud expression of his face. Training with clones did wonders for Naruto, and in little more than 6 months, Naruto already increased his taijutsu, genjutsu and the Rasengan abilities to at least a high chunin. By the end of the year, Naruto would learn how to use the bow staff effectively and then, finally, begin wind elemental manipulation. Jiraiya was so enthusiastic that he began to consider teaching Naruto a second affinity on the 3rd year, maybe Doden or Sweden. Naruto and Jiraiya were walking on a plain field as the sun was just about to set. The 1st year was already at its end and Naruto managed to finish his genjutsu training to at least acceptable levels. Clearly, he wasn't cut out for the art of illusions, but at least he would be able to escape from almost any technique that someone casted on him. After the genjutsu part, Naruto focused his entire team on physical exercises in order to build some muscles and stamina. Both his muscles and height grew and now Naruto was almost reaching Jiraiya's neck. The pervert was surprised by Naruto's sudden growth, but then he suspected it had something to do with not eating so much ramen all the time, instead eating healthy food. Another part of Naruto's training revolved towards learning the katas of Sarutobi's clan style. Naruto received a present from Jiraiya, a unique staff, made with heavy metal for bigger impact. The weapon was black with silver at each end. At first, Naruto appeared to be swinging the weapon like a drunk civilian, but with practice, Jiraiya could very well see that Naruto managed to use the weapon as if it was an extension of his body. The style consisted of using the staff together with body movements that would improve the weapon's speed and more deadly, and Naruto was well in his way to learn one of the Sandaime Hokage's many legacies. Also, the staff was special since Naruto could use chakra to diminish its size and keep it like a sword strapped on his back. Because of this, he could very well surprise the enemy by using chakra to elongate the weapon. Right now, the pervert was massaging his bruised left cheek and Naruto could only sigh in dismay seeing that his sensei would never learn his lesson. Every time they would walk inside a village, they had to leave not because of danger that Akatsuki would find them, but rather escaping from the women's wrath after spotting the pervert peeping on them. Oi Naruto, let's settle for today, it's already night and it's not wise to travel in the dark, said Jiraiya, earning a snort from Naruto, who knew that he just wanted to stop to put some ice on the wound so that it would stop hurting. Okay Ero-sensei, but at least admit that your abilities in peeping greatly diminished these days. Almost every village we've been to, you were discovered and we had to run away, laughed Naruto, before receiving a punch in the head from Jiraiya. Oh, what was that for, Ero-sensei? Asked Naruto, though he was smiling inside from being able to irritate his teacher. That's for making fun of the abilities of the almighty Gamma Sennin, brat. Now, let's fix up the tent and gather some wood, said Jiraiya, before smiling upon seeing Naruto mumbling some curse words to the Sannin, while looking for some wood to ignite a fireplace. After everything was set, Jiraiya used a small Kaden jutsu and lit up the fire. Arrow-sensei, how long before we meet that friend of yours, what is his name again? Asked Naruto as he was lying down on the ground while looking at the stars. It somehow eased Naruto to look at the sky at night. He would be lost in trying to look at the constellations that Jiraiya once taught him, but it was relaxing nonetheless. Jiraiya smiled at his prodigy pupil. In the beginning of this journey, Jiraiya sometimes confused Naruto with Namikaze Minato, simply because of the drive both had towards training and improving their abilities. However, with time, Jiraiya managed to separate their personalities simply because Naruto was more of a prankster than Minato, often playing jokes with the Sannin, a trait that Naruto's mother had. His name is Makoto Sojiro and he lives in a village close to the desert that separates Fire Country from Wind Country. In actuality, he is now a retired shinobi, but the man was responsible for great deeds for Suna in his prime. Some say that his Fudan skills rivaled none and even say that he could have become Kazekage if he so pleased. He'll be more than adequate to teach you the art of wind ninjutsu, explained Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto as he flipped a dango stick in his mouth. I wonder, though, if I will be able to use the element effectively. I've read a book that said that Fudan ninjutsu was hard to learn and even harder to master in order to be used in battle effectively, wondered Naruto, but Jiraiya only smiled before explaining to Naruto. Indeed, wind users were rare in this world because of those reasons. However, for those who manages to learn the element, that information alone sends an opponent on edge. Wind is the most feared element in all the elemental nations, Naruto. It serves both as close and middle range, and anyone who dares to face a wind user will most certainly lose. The only weakness, though, is long range, but you don't have to worry about it. Long range users are easy to beat, once you know the most important thing, explained Jiraiya, before Naruto turned his attention to Jiraiya. Those who can only attack from a distance are rendered useless when the opponent learns how to get closer, meaning that once you eliminate the distance between you and a long-range fighter, he's done for and have to adapt his fighting skills, said Jiraiya, earning a nod in acceptance from Naruto. As times passed, student and sensei continued to talk about the difference between close and long-range fighting and how to use the opponent's strength against him. It didn't take long for them to say goodnight to each other as Naruto stayed on guard until Jiraiya would relieve him in 4 hours. The next day After erasing all evidence of their presence, Jiraiya and Naruto moved towards the place where they would be for at least a couple of months. Naruto didn't know, but Jiraiya did already converse with Sojiro regarding the blonde's training in Fudan ninjutsu. Sojiro showed interest in training the boy at the time, since he knew from Jiraiya that the boy was strong-willed enough to learn everything about wind ninjutsu. After a couple hours walking, the desert appeared in the horizon, meaning that the two were near from their destination. However, Naruto was confused upon seeing that Jiraiya stopped and was looking for something. Arrow-sensei, what are you doing? Asked Naruto, but Jiraiya offered no response, instead just smiled before beginning an intricate set of seals. The seal sequence took longer than Naruto thought, and suddenly Jiraiya slammed his hands on the ground with force. The result stunned Naruto as the image shifted from a plain field to a 2-story house with a considerable garden. After seeing it, Naruto did the only thing he could at the moment. He let his chin fall and the mouth open at the possibility of such a thing. Making a house disappear using chakra was something out of this world, Naruto thought. Jiraiya for his part laughed hard at Naruto's fish face and explained about the art of seals and its uses. He stopped short, though, when he heard a voice echoing in the shadows. It's been a long time, Jiraiya-san, I've received your messenger hawk, said the voice, but Naruto couldn't find the person's location, since the voice was simply all around. Suddenly, an old but imposing figure appeared holding a simple wooden staff. Gray hair just like Jiraiya, but short. Sojiro was just as big as the Sannin. Naruto wondered. It's good to see you too, Sojiro-san. I see that time has been kind to you, my friend, smiled Jiraiya, earning a snort from Sojiro. It was common fact, at least for Jiraiya, that just like Orochimaru, Sojiro didn't appreciate the consequences of getting old. I wouldn't go to the same trouble as Orochimaru to cheat death, but I can't help but agree with him that getting old is such a drag, said Sojiro, earning laughter from Jiraiya. While the elders were talking and remembering the good old days, Naruto was left standing next to Jiraiya as he sees the man upside down. Normally, the blonde would conclude by saying that he didn't look like much, but that would be his old self thinking. Naruto had enough experience as a shinobi now to never interpret what it looks like, instead of seeing the underneath. It actually took a little while for them to stop the conversation, but instead of greeting Naruto, Sojiro just turned his back to them and signaled them to follow him. After a couple of steps, Sojiro turned and began a sequence of hand seals, which Naruto wondered about the similarity with Jiraiya's sequence from before. Afterwards, he slammed both hands on the ground and the landscape suddenly shifted, until Naruto couldn't see either the desert or the path behind. Jiraiya looked at his student with a smile on his face. Sojiro happens to be extremely cautious, even after retirement, it seems. With Fuinjutsu, he can hide his house so that no one can see where it is. Also, as you can see, this house doesn't belong to the usual terrain, meaning we just jumped to another dimension where the house is located, explained Jiraiya, before waiting to see Naruto screaming like crazy at the implications of what was said. What? How the hell are we in another dimension? Shouted Naruto, before Sojiro began to speak on Jiraiya's behalf. Jiraiya-san said you're loud, but I thought he was joking. Well, to answer your question, it would require explaining quite a lot of theory regarding Fuinjutsu, and with the amount of experience you have now, it would be impossible for me to explain it to you and also impossible for you to fully understand. The reason why I brought you here is twofold. First, you have powerful enemies that are tracking you as we speak, and second, it will benefit your training in Fuden Ninjutsu. Now, come inside and we'll get to talk about how we will spend the next 4 months, said Sojiro as he turned once again to the house and stepped forward with Naruto and Jiraiya close behind. Once inside, all three of them went to a room that had a huge library of scrolls and a table in the middle for studies. Sojiro took one of the chairs and ushered his guests to do the same as he grabbed a strange object. To Naruto, it looked like simple disc shape made of glass, but for the most experienced, this was a special piece of glass. Naruto, I happen to know from Jiraiya that you possess a wind affinity. However, while it's rare in your country, it isn't in wind country. As a matter of speaking, our studies with wind jutsus have been carried out since the Shodaime Keisage's era many years ago. I'll be explaining everything I know about the art, but first we need to know how strong is your affinity towards wind jutsus, said Sojiro, this time earning looks of surprise by Jiraiya, not only Naruto. Sojiro was expecting this, so he smiled and proceeded to explain. This object, as you know Jiraiya, is what Suna uses to find their ninja's affinities. However, for those who possesses affinity for wind, we also have a specific object that indicated how strong is said affinity, explained Sojiro, earning a nod from Jiraiya and Naruto, before the man continued to explain. The method is quite simple. Naruto only needs to focus chakra on the disc and it will be cut multiple times. The key to knowing how strong is his affinity is the numbers of cuts on the disc. Try Naruto, let's see how strong is your affinity, said Sojiro as he handed the disc to Naruto. Naruto, then, extended his hand and placed the disc on top of it, before he began to focus his chakra. Quickly, Naruto focused the necessary chakra and was surprised to see that the disc was being sliced many times. 5, 15, 20, 25 cuts total. Naruto was confused, since he didn't know if that was good or bad. Also, the look of surprise that Sojiro expressed on his face didn't tell much. Naruto could possess the strongest affinity yet or the worst. The man, though, cleared his throat and looked at Naruto while smiling. That's an odd number for someone with your experience. Most Junin in Suna could only cut 15 times and they were already trained in the art. Jiraiya, are you sure he's from Konoha? Asked Sojiro, before seeing a nod from the pervert, before he continued. Well, then, it seems you'll be able to grasp pretty much everything that is to be taught regarding Fuden ninjutsu. Now, your training will begin tomorrow, since I have yet to prepare the material necessary. So, I'll be showing you to your respective rooms and prepare some dinner for us, said Sojiro, before rising from his chair and leaving the room, followed closely by Naruto and Jiraiya. After Sojiro guided Naruto to his room, he went with Jiraiya to his room, but not without taking the opportunity to talk to the pervert. Jiraiya knew that Naruto's numbers were above average and he also knew that Sojiro was beyond impressed. The man was smart, Jiraiya knew. Now that Naruto is not here, I'd like to express my surprise concerning the results, said Sojiro, earning a nod from Jiraiya who smiled as he was listening to his friend. While I said that Junin are only able to cut 15 times, I didn't say that he surpassed the Nadaime Kazekage, who until now detained the record for most cuts. Who is he, Jiraiya? How is this possible? Asked Sojiro, but Jiraiya was too stunned to even answer. Naruto having more potential than a cage-level ninja was surprising enough, but surpassing the Nadaime Kazekage, who was known as Suna's Kase Tenshu, Wind God, was beyond anything he ever thought possible. I'm just as stunned as you are, actually. Naruto indeed held great promise in the future, but I never thought he could surpass a Kage in elemental manipulation, at least not for a good 10 years. And thinking about it, this number can increase after he masters the element, am I right? Asked Jiraiya, earning a nod from Sojiro who couldn't help but smile upon finding such a prodigy to pass his teachings to. I want to know more about him, Jiraiya. Tell me all his abilities so far and his accomplishments, said Sojiro, earning a nod from Jiraiya, who then invited Sojiro for a cup of tea for their upcoming conversation. After Sojiro made up some tea, Jiraiya began to tell everything about Naruto. He told about the boy's skills up to now, involving, of course, his uncanny ability to learn things faster with the Kage Bunshin technique. He told about Naruto's first C-ranked mission, where he along with his team faced an A-ranked missing nin from Mist, to which Sojiro was surprised to hear that was that time that Naruto learned the true power of the Kyuubi no Yoko. He also came to hear about the time of the Suna sound invasion, that Naruto managed to save Konoha by beating Shukaku the one-tailed Jinchuriki. That was the only time I thanked the heavens that I was already retired, unless I would be dragged to this mess. At the time, Orochimaru lured Suna to attack Konoha, taking advantage that the Wind Daimyo was choosing Konoha for his missions. So, Naruto managed to beat the Yondaime Kazekage's son while possessed by Shikaku. What else? Smiled Sojiro since he envisioned the next 4 months and the times Naruto will surpass every expectations set before him. There are many more accomplishments to tell you about. His team was responsible for freeing Snow Country and Takigakure from being taken by missing nins once. I assure you Sojiro, the brat will surprise you a lot. He may not get it right away, but after practice, he will learn it faster than anybody else. The people in Konoha has much faith in his abilities in the future to come, said Jiraiya, to which Sojiro nodded, before saying that he now needed to prepare Naruto's training for the upcoming 4 months. Jiraiya nodded and went back to his room to take a quick nap. Due to escaping from Akatsuki's clutches, Jiraiya and Naruto weren't able to stay much time resting, being on constant move. Now that they would be safe for the upcoming 4 months, he could finally rest. Later, when dinner was ready, Naruto and Sojiro began to talk about some light subjects. Naruto learned that Sojiro wasn't very fond of talking shinobi while eating, so he kept the million questions he had in his mind to himself at least until tomorrow. Naruto confessed to both Jiraiya and Sojiro that he never thought about having a hobby, since all he did during his life was to train and eat ramen. However, Naruto couldn't help but be amazed at some different subjects that Jiraiya and Sojiro were discussing about. Their subjects began from a few jokes about the past to intellectual discussions about both the Fire and Wind daimyo's lives and their respective decisions concerning specific topics. Eventually, the conversation was over and all of them went to their respective rooms to sleep. Naruto, though, could admit that he didn't understand half the words that were being discussed. Nevertheless, he felt kind of relieved of getting to relax from the ninja training, and it was a weird sensation for the blonde. Thinking about other subjects apart from shinobi related was a strange concept for Naruto, and suddenly the word Hokage appeared in his mind. As he turned on the water for a quick shower, Naruto was trying to associate the daimyo figure of a big country like Konoha with the Hokage. Certainly, one being the ruler of the country and the other being the ruler of a hidden village. However, if the daimyo rules the whole country, then the daimyo rules Konoha as well. All these thoughts were in Naruto's head at the moment, and he couldn't figure the answer to these questions. Getting out of the shower, he got in some light sleeping clothes, not that horrible pajamas that he wore in the series, and went to a very comfortable bed. Introduction to politics was something the Ninja Academy actually covered, but Naruto never really paid much attention to the subject, even if the teacher, at the time, wouldn't explain it in terms he could understand. For Naruto, everything not connected to the shinobi way of life didn't pique his interest much. However, now the doubt about who has more authority in Konoha did plague his mind a bit. Naruto knew that Konoha provided services for Fire Country, since the Fire Daimyo would request a vast majority of missions to be held by the village. But, could the Hokage say no to the Daimyo without consequences? The blonde was getting impatient with not knowing the answers to these questions, so he instead closed his eyes and tried not to think about it so much. The next day. Rising up early, Naruto was already at the kitchen making some breakfast when Jiraiya showed up, yawning from the nice sleep he had in ages. "It seems you're eager to begin training as always, Naruto," smiled Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto, who settled a glass of orange juice to the pervert, who in turn accepted eagerly. "Ero-sensei, I was remembering your discussion with Sojiro-sensei yesterday about politics, and I was wondering about something," said Naruto, earning Jiraiya's attention. At first, Jiraiya thought he was still sleeping as he blinked a couple of times in front of the blonde. It wasn't just because of the subject, it was just because Naruto expressed interest in something else besides training as a shinobi. He issued Naruto to come forward with his doubt. "Well, I was thinking about the daimyo and the Hokage position. I know that the Hokage is the ruler of the hidden village, but since the village is located within Fire territory, then the Hokage answers to the daimyo, correct?" asked Naruto, to which Jiraiya nodded, before the blonde continued. "My question is, can the Hokage choose to not to respond or would have to abide by the daimyo's wishes?" asked Naruto, before seeing Jiraiya smile. "You're correct. Indeed, the Hokage must answer to the daimyo, however the daimyo has no saying in how the Hokage rules Konoha. Although, this doesn't mean that the Hokage is completely independent from the daimyo. You don't know this, but the daimyo has access to all of Konoha's legal documentation and shinobi records. Also, there are certain decisions that a Hokage alone can't choose, like the cage position itself. When a Hokage steps down, it's up to the daimyo to choose a worthy candidate for the position, who, then, will be submitted to the village's Junin Council for the final decision," explained Jiraiya, before seeing Naruto crack his brain for a while, before smiling in understanding. I didn't know you'd be interested in politics, Naruto, said Jiraiya. Well, it's not that it perked my interest, it was just a doubt of my own. I think all this information was covered at the academy, I just didn't pay attention that much. Thanks for explaining it to me, Ero-sensei, smiled Naruto, earning a nod from Jiraiya, before he heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Ah, I see you two are already up. Good. I actually thought I would have to wake you all up using some methods of my own, but that won't be necessary. Now, Naruto, after we finish breakfast, I'll explain to you our schedule for your training. During your stay here, you'll learn everything there is to know about wind manipulation, and when I say everything, I mean it just that. I have with me over 50 years of study in the art, gathered in one major scroll which will be your friend for the duration of your stay here. This will involve not only practical exercises, but mental as well, since learning to control the wind requires knowledge and above all, patience, said Sojiro, before grabbing a glass to fill it with orange juice as well as some cereal in the fridge. Naruto for his part managed to see how enthusiastic Sojiro was and couldn't help but smile in retrospect to what the man said about his training. Once Sojiro finished his breakfast, he got up and ushered both Naruto and Jiraiya to follow him outside when they would be commence. They walked for a while, until Sojiro stopped and turned to set his gaze on his new student. Now, this will be your training ground for the duration of your training, said Sojiro as he motioned the youngster to look around a bit. The scenario was interesting, Naruto wondered. Lots and lots of trees filled the area, but somehow it was different than an actual forest and a small lake with a waterfall to his left. Naruto couldn't help but marvel at the beautiful scenery set before him. The water falling in contrast with the sunlight was an astonishing sight to behold. After some time wandering his eyes around, Naruto smiled and fixed eye contact with his new sensei. You have a nice home, Sojiro-sensei. I could just stare at the waterfall for months on end, smiled Naruto, earning a nod from Sojiro, followed by a smile as he turned to understand what Naruto sees in it. I suppose so, I've been living here for 15 years now, but it's a sight to behold, indeed. Now, I'll explain you what we'll be doing, and as I said before, I'll teach you everything I know. As you know or do not know, Fuden ninjutsu is, to me, the deadliest element in ninjutsu. Although it's chakra consuming, a wind user is feared throughout the elemental nations, simply because you can use it in close, mid and long range fighting. No affinity covers as much as wind. Now, Fuden divides itself in 3 subcategories, and you'll learn them all. First one of them is the wind itself. By using chakra, you can focus on increasing the power of the wind. Assemble hurricanes and even creating strong gusts of wind capable of tearing out trees from the ground with a simple blow. The second one is the wind slice ability. This type of power is most used with swords as it elongates the metal and also strengthens them to fight. Last, but not least, is air pressure control. The last one is the most advanced form of wind manipulation, and sadly to say, I can't teach you much further than the very basic. Up to now, only one jutsu was created by air pressure manipulation, explained Sojiro, before was interrupted by Naruto. Sojiro-sensei, may I ask why the third type is frowned upon? I believe it would be an advantage to control such element, asked Naruto, while crossing his arms, but this time Jiraiya took the liberty to explain. Air pressure manipulation requires too much chakra and too much concentration to be used properly, and in the midst of battle, the enemy wouldn't wait for you to do that. There were those who lost their lives in battle because of using a skill they weren't familiarized with. As I understand, you'll be learning the first and second abilities of Fuden ninjutsu and leave the third one for last, said Jiraiya, looking at Sojiro for confirmation. Indeed, he will. First, though, is imperative that you learn how to use Fuden chakra, and then we'll progress to a most advanced study of the art. Physical training will be held in daylight, and when the sun goes out, we'll head back to read some material about Fuden ninjutsu and its many uses. Any questions? asked Sojiro, earning a nod from Naruto. Yes, I know that Fuden is an offensive affinity, but can we use wind for defensive purposes? Asked Naruto, to which Sojiro smiled. Just like every affinity, Fuden have both offensive and defensive capabilities. Of course, wind is more suited for offense, but it's also used to defend. I happen to know some techniques that serve for protection. Speaking of techniques, they'll serve as objectives to this training. They are 10 techniques I'll teach you during these 4 months. Of course, there are plenty other techniques, but I choose these for you to learn each one of the wind's capabilities. I'll reveal them as you progress in your training. Your schedule will be divided in 4. The first month will be to teach you how to use Fuden chakra how it's supposed to be. The next 3 months will be to teach you the 3 capabilities of Fuden that we discussed before. How is that? Asked Sojiro with a smile on his face as he could almost feel Naruto's excitement. Now, Jiraiya here told me about how you use the clone technique to practice faster, so we'll take advantage of it and learn the first aspects of Fuden manipulation. You see, that tree over there, pointed Sojiro, before seeing Naruto turn to meet the tree that his sensei was pointing. Sojiro grabbed a lowly leaf from the ground and ushered Naruto to look as he explained. One of the many aspects of Fuden ninjutsu is to slice objects using only chakra, said Sojiro as he focused some chakra in his hand and showed the leaf being sliced in 2 before Naruto's very eye. You are to use as many Kage Bunshin and each practice this. At the end of the day, I want to see all these leaves sliced in 2, ordered Sojiro, before seeing the blonde make the hand signal for the technique. Instantly, a large group of Narutos appeared before Jiraiya and Sojiro, before each grabbing a leaf to practice, thus leaving the tree without a single leaf. Sojiro was astonished by the number, but when he looked at Jiraiya and saw that the perverted wasn't showing any signs of being surprised, Sojiro just waved it off and watched the clones attempting to slice the leaf. So, how long do you think he'll take? Asked Sojiro, before he heard a small snort from Jiraiya. Hard to say, really, this technique of his reduces time to large amounts. He won't need the whole day, though, that I can assure you, said Jiraiya, though in his mind, he had a conviction that Naruto would need close to an hour or 2 until one of the leaves is sliced. Throughout the training, Jiraiya would actually count how much time Naruto needed to fully grasp a technique, and even if the boy didn't focus so much in ninjutsu techniques, aside from the ones he already knew of course, Jiraiya was positive that with this amount of clones, it wouldn't take long for the blonde to scream the technique's completion with the same enthusiasm that Guy shows when he wins a challenge against Kakashi. Speaking of the blonde, there he was in the middle of his doppelgangers focusing on slicing the leaf in 2, however to no avail. Nevertheless, Naruto focused on the prime objective that was leaving this place with a considerable concept of what it means to be a true master of his affinity. The blonde understood the concept behind the Kage Bunshin method of training, so he knew that the training that he will be subjected to under Sojiro would, in normal circumstances, take years to accomplish. However, now was not the time to think of what didn't happen yet. He knew that eventually he will have to focus in other subjects, but right now his objective was for every one of his clones slice the leaf in 2, which meant that by the time they are done, the real Naruto will accumulate all their experience with this exercise. 2 hours passed and the Narutos kept on going non-stop with the intention of completing the exercise. Sojiro questioned Jiraiya about the boy's chakra capacity and wondered how could he sustain the Bunshins and work on the technique as well. The response, although unexpected, didn't surprise Naruto's new sensei. Sojiro already knew that with Naruto, a lot of surprises would come and that he shouldn't wonder the reason behind it anymore. So when Jiraiya said that Naruto already had more chakra than a high elite Junin, Sojiro whistled, but otherwise didn't show any surprise to Jiraiya. However, all those thoughts of not being surprised any longer with the blonde disappeared when he heard the distinguished sound of leaves being sliced and turned to the clones. The sounds of leaves being cut was like a weapon shooting bullets repeatedly without needing to reload. Well, I guess I was right, he didn't need the whole day, you might as well introduce him to the next step of the training, before the sun goes down, advised Jiraiya, still finding amused to see Sojiro's stunned face upon seeing Naruto finishing the exercise in close to 2 hours. He has 1 month to train on the fundamentals of wind manipulation. Jiraiya, also we're not in a hurry here, so I don't see a need for him to waste chakra and fail to absorb the theory later tonight, explained Sojiro, before seeing Jiraiya nod in understanding. Suddenly, the clones vanished and Naruto appeared in front of the two elders, with a clearly happy expression on his face, which in turn made Sojiro smile in return. The boy sure has stamina, I guess he could have gone longer today, but for today is alright, he'll have plenty of time to practice. I can see you're happy, Naruto, but I wonder if you'll remain smiling once this training is over. Now, you'll finalize today's training with some physical workout. Jiraiya said that you're practicing with the bow staff, so practice some of the katas and then come back inside, ordered Sojiro, before seeing Naruto nodding with enthusiasm and remove a scroll from his holster in order to summon his new weapon. Immediately, the blonde closed his eyes in order to remember the many katas that were being drilled in his mind from practice as he was twirling the not-so-light staff with both hands. When he opened his eyes, Naruto focused his attention of imaginary opponents coming at him and began the dance. He began by thrusting it forward before grabbing at the end of the staff more maximum reach, before recovering and jumping to land a roundhouse kick at the incoming opponent who tried to attack him with a well-aimed punch to his face. Seeing two other attackers coming from the right, Naruto prepared defensive maneuvers for the imaginary swords that were constantly attacking the blonde in rapid succession. Naruto, then, used the other end of the staff and managed to hit one of the attackers on the shoulder before twirling the staff once more and landing a strike on the man's chin by using the staff to balance himself in the air while he used his foot right on target. The blonde practiced a while longer until fatigue reached him. He entered the house and went for a quick shower before feeling the sudden impulse to list some curse words to his new sensei. Right there on the table was located a pile of books and scrolls that no doubt were meant for him to read them. Even though the blonde found reason to start reading books on shinobi matters, he wasn't entirely happy upon seeing a pile of books and scrolls to read. Suddenly, Sojiro appeared and smiled at the chance of getting back at him for surprising him a couple of times. Now, Naruto, like I told you before, at night you'll be studying the theory behind wind manipulation. Like all ninja art, beyond training, Fuden ninjutsu requires patience and knowledge, which is why after dinner, you'll be reading these books and scrolls here. The books contain the general theory whereas the scrolls represents the jutsus you will be learning throughout your time here. Do you have any questions? Asked Sojiro. Actually, yes, I was thinking about the leaf training exercise. I remembered reading about 2 necessary exercises to initiate in wind manipulation. What is the next one? Asked Naruto, earning a nod in understanding from Sojiro. The next one will be attempted tomorrow, but I see no ill in explaining to you right now so then you can prepare yourself for the task. You remember the waterfall outside, don't you? Asked Sojiro, before Naruto nodded and he continued. Well, basically, you'll be doing the same thing with the leaves, except now you'll have to cut a waterfall in half, explained Sojiro, only waiting for the same outburst almost everyone makes upon hearing the exercise, which much to his delight, came. How the hell am I going to cut a waterfall? This is ridiculous. How can I slice the water? Asked Naruto, earning yet another nod from Sojiro, but instead of answering right away, he thought of giving a homework assignment for Naruto. That will be your job to figure out for tomorrow. You see, in one of the books, lies the answer you're looking for and it will be your assignment to find the information and explain it to me, assigned Sojiro, before seeing Naruto frown and then went to the kitchen for dinner without even looking at Sojiro's face, earning a slight laugh from the elder shinobi who in turn understood why Jiraiya said it was fun to teach this brat. The next day. The next morning, the same ritual happened once more. Breakfast and waiting for his sensei to arrive for the next part of the training. Naruto understood from the books he stayed up all night reading, the secret behind slicing the waterfall. The truth was that Naruto would draw a line using Fuden ninjutsu, cutting the current water from falling entirely, keeping the first half up the line with his chakra. The other half would fall freely, because it isn't being sustained by Naruto's chakra. Suddenly, Naruto heard steps coming from the steps and saw his new sensei. Naruto found it strange that Jiraiya was spending a lot of time in his room resting, but he stopped thinking once Sojiro asked him the question, to which Naruto responded. Indeed, wind chakra can slice everything, even water for a couple of seconds. By using wind chakra, you can slice the water particles, which in the waterfall case, the first half will remain suspended and the bottom half will let gravity run its course. Very good, now the theory is resolved, but we are still short of practicing it to see how you fare against the waterfall. This waterfall happens to have somewhat of a bridge right in front of the falling water, so you won't have problems with finding a spot. Now finish your breakfast and we'll begin right away, said Sojiro, earning a nod from Naruto. A few minutes afterwards, Naruto and Sojiro were standing right in front of the waterfall. The day wasn't sunny like yesterday, in fact it was a bit cloudy with the prospect of rain later on. This exercise is the same principle as the leaf slice exercise, but now you'll amplify the area and cut the entire waterfall. By completing this exercise, you'll fit all the requirements needed for the first techniques I plan to teach you. However, that won't happen until you learn to be proficient in using the standard wind abilities in the midst of a physical exercise. In order to learn wind techniques, you must learn how to use them adequately. Wind techniques require concentration and patience, so you can't do it while you're either not focused on the fight or in the middle of defending from an attack. Now, use the bridge there and create as many cage bunshin you feel necessary to be able to slice the waterfall in half, said Sojiro, before turning his back on Naruto and proceeded to walk back home. Naruto remained watching his sensei and actually wondered why the man wouldn't be around to see his progress on the exercise. From what he read, the waterfall exercise takes a long time to complete. Doesn't matter, though, Naruto thought. Like all obstacles set before me in the past, I'll overcome this as well. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, thought Naruto as the clones immediately vanished and appeared on top of the waterfall, before extending both hands and begin the exercise. With Jiraiya . Dressing in only a light blue kimono, Jiraiya was sure taking his time to rest and enjoy the time in Sojiro's home. He knew that the man would be taking care of Naruto's training, so he could rest all the time he wanted without worrying about Naruto being alone to train. Thinking of the blonde since they left Konoha really brought a smile on his face. Never before he saw such enthusiasm and drive to improve from someone, and Jiraiya was sure that Naruto would return to the village quite strong. He would even be amused upon wondering a fight between Kakashi and Naruto by the time he returned from the journey. Jiraiya was looking outside from the window only to see that it had started raining when suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. When he turned, though, he was confused to see only Sojiro standing there, before he kneeled on the ground and fixed some sake for him as well. "Where is Naruto?" asked Jiraiya, displaying a serious face like he knew what the man did. "He is training at the waterfall. Don't worry about the boy, Jiraiya. He is old enough to learn that sometimes, you have to improve on your own. He can't depend on others to train his whole life," said Sojiro as he drank all the sake left in the cup, before pouring out some more. Jiraiya, however, snorted at the man from insinuating that Jiraiya lifted a finger to aid in Naruto's training. "You're wrong, Sojiro, if you think I helped him train. If much, I taught him 2 jutsus and how to counter genjutsu. The rest it was all him. He was the one who perfected the Rasengan with one hand and learned to amplify it." He managed to learn on his own 3 very useful attack jutsus and even mastered a taijutsu style on his own. The bow staff katas, he learned by reading the scroll containing the movements. You don't need to worry about him learning how to improve his abilities on his own, he knows that already, explained Jiraiya as he got up and left Sojiro, who in turn smiled and looked outside at the rain. Jiraiya grabbed an umbrella and went outside to see his prodigy. The Sannin didn't know how long Naruto was trying the exercise, but he damn well know Naruto wouldn't be able to do it right away, no matter how much he improved his skills. Truth to his wonders, upon arriving, he saw Naruto and his clones attempting to slice the whole waterfall. Instead, all each Naruto could do was throw water to each respective faces, not managing much. The boy was persistent, though, and wouldn't give up so soon. Also, there was something in this drive of his that amazed Jiraiya. Even though there were quite some distance between the two, Jiraiya could very well see the look of pure concentration that Naruto displayed upon attempting the exercise. You can do this, Naruto. Slice this waterfall in half and you'll proceed in this training, thought Jiraiya as he stood there while resting the umbrella on his shoulders. 5 hours later. After a minor rest followed by a soldier pill, Naruto continued once again. His clones were halfway there and the waterfall was already showing signs of being sliced any minute now. This was the time that Sojiro appeared next to Jiraiya. The rain already stopped and the blonde could now focus more on the task at hand. How much time do you think he will take to complete? Asked Sojiro, before seeing Jiraiya smile. Just about now, I'm afraid. The waterfall is already on the verge of slicing. The next one will do it, said Jiraiya. Suddenly, his guess turned out to be right as the noise of the waterfall slicing in half with wind chakra echoed through the clearing. After the clones dissipated, Naruto remained looking at the waterfall, as in looking at his accomplishment in Fuden ninjutsu. When he turned, he saw both Sojiro and Jiraiya looking at him from the ground, so he used a shunshin and appeared right in front of the elders. Congrats, Naruto, in only 2 days, you managed to complete the 2 steps necessary to begin the real training. Now, I can see that you're exhausted, so let's back home to take a shower and then I'll show the jutsus you'll be learning from me, said Sojiro, earning a nod from Naruto, who then looked at Jiraiya, who in turn was smiling in acknowledgement. Naruto didn't need to ask, because he knew that look on Jiraiya's face and he only showed once Naruto managed to complete an exercise. Later at night. After a nice shower and an amazing dinner, in Naruto's mind, the blonde and Sojiro were now reading one big scroll that contained all the techniques Naruto would learn in 3 months. Although he wouldn't practice it for a considerable time, Sojiro advised Naruto to understand each technique's theory before attempting to perform them. The list of jutsus covered all 3 forms of wind manipulations and the scroll contained wide details of the techniques, informing the hand seals, chakra capacity necessary, jutsu level and, of course, how to perform. Naruto saw the jutsu titles and couldn't contain his smile to go from ear to ear. Fuden Daitapa, Wind Release. Great Breakthrough Jutsu. Fuden Suido no Tatsumaki, Wind Release. Tornado Tunnel Jutsu. Fuden Kase no Tate, Wind Release. Wind Shield Jutsu. Fuden Repusho, Wind Release. Gale Wind Palm Jutsu. Fuden Kase no Yaba, Wind Release. Wind Sword Jutsu. Fuden Kazakiri, Wind Release. Wind Cutter Jutsu. Fuden Saraisu no Tatsumaki, Wind Release. Slicing Tornado Jutsu. Fuden Kaden Shuriken, Wind Release. Rotating Shuriken Jutsu. Fuden Juausigen, Wind Release. Gravity Force Jutsu. Fuden Atsugai, Wind Release. Pressure Damage Jutsu. Immediately, Naruto proceeded to read the first technique with confidence that he would learn everything that he needed to, in order to master all these techniques in 3 months. Being located near the desert, the sun was scorching hot and the sound of the waterfall falling on the small river would send anyone to eternal bliss at the thought of escaping the hot temperature, hence why one pervert was seen with only his belly on top of the water level, like he was on one hell of a vacation. He was hoping to enjoy every single moment of the last couple of days he had, before he and Naruto had to leave the place. Thinking hard, Jiraiya couldn't figure out the next step of Naruto's training. A year and a half already passed and Naruto managed to learn quite a lot. His taijutsu skills were propelled, bearing, easily, the skills of a high-level chunin. Naruto even managed to create a new taijutsu style that relies heavily on wind element, which surprised both Sojiro and Jiraiya at the time. Also he improved his bow staff style a lot, to which Jiraiya himself reasoned him to be on par with a chunin from the Sarutobi clan and maybe, rival a Junin at the end of their journey. Also, the boy's chakra-related training progressed nicely with him being almost immune to genjutsu attacks and just added close to 10 Fuden jutsus on his repertoire. Jiraiya chuckled upon remembering Naruto's new temporary sensei gasping at the speed in which Naruto learned the jutsus, and the man really thought the blonde to be a genius. However, that was only possible because of the blonde's Kage Bunshin style of training. The question remained, though, about the next step. Jiraiya had a couple of choices to teach Naruto about, which was introducing him to the art of fuinjutsu, sealing arts, or even teach the brat a new element to rely on, in case his wind jutsus weren't enough to subdue the enemy. Fuinjutsu is the hardest ninja art to master and he doubted Naruto would be interested in seals, rather than simple exploding tags and storage seals, so he pushed it aside, focusing on more ninjutsu. Now the question was which element to teach. He immediately left out Kaden simply because of his prime affinity being wind. It wouldn't make sense for Naruto to learn two heavily offensive affinities and leave the defense side unprotected. Also thinking about it, Raiden wouldn't be considered either. So that left the Sannin with Doden and Suiden ninjutsu for Naruto to learn for defensive issues. Doden would be his first choice since it is Jiraiya's prime affinity, but he also has knowledge on Suiden techniques and how to learn them, plus with Naruto having Fuden at his disposal, Suiden elemental ninjutsu could be very useful. Plus, the brat was still 15 and he could very well be learning how to use Doden techniques in the future. Suddenly, he saw what appeared to be a shift in the wind before he looked at the waterfall only for it to be sliced in a diagonal sense, probably a result of the wind sword technique. He, then, turned his eyes to the opposite side of the waterfall before smirking as Naruto and Sojiro were engaging in a full-out spar. Whether or not Sojiro was going all out he didn't know, but for Naruto to manage his own against this man was nothing short of impressive. Naruto was using his bow staff while defending from Sojiro's quick and deadly blows, before performing a major back flip just as Sojiro was about to land a vicious kick on his head. While making hand seals in the air, Naruto, then, collected air through his lungs for Fuden Daitapa, wind release, great breakthrough jutsu. Sojiro smiled at the kid's ingenuity, but focused chakra to his feet so as not to be taken away by the wind. After the wind died down, Sojiro unleashed some shurikens, before throwing them in the air and making some hand seals for Fuden Kaden Shuriken, wind release, rotating shuriken jutsu. Upon seeing this, Naruto immediately was sent on edge, seeing that controlling shurikens was a very deadly technique to face. However, he didn't need to wait as suddenly. Sojiro stopped swirling the shurikens near him and sent them all to attack Naruto at the same time. Seeing no other way to escape the technique's grasp, Naruto increased the speed of 4 sequence hand seals and once again exhaled a small gust of air, before controlling the wind chakra to surround him. Fuden K's no Tate, wind release, wind shield jutsu. After the defense dropped, Naruto saw that the shurikens were nowhere in sight, so he rushed to attack Sojiro before he had the opportunity to control other shurikens. He quickly focused chakra to his bow staff to elongate the weapon and began the assault against Sojiro with a new kata he devised. It consisted of a 6-combo hit with the usage of the Kage Bunshin technique. Holding the bow staff with his both hands on Sojiro's chest area, he initiated by hitting the man on his right side, thus making Sojiro lose his air for a second, before Naruto hit him on the left side, thus increasing the pain. Seeing that the man was incapacitated, Naruto then attacked the man's legs with a powerful thrust, before swirling the staff and hitting him on the shoulder. Afterwards, Sojiro managed, beyond the pain of being hit with Naruto's staff, to see that Naruto landed the staff on the ground, before resorting on it for balance as he landed an uppercut kick right on the man's chin, sending him flying straight to the air where a new Naruto was waiting with a sequence of kicks, before landing one on the man's head, thus sending him straight down to suffer the immeasurable pain in agony. Or so he would have, if the Sojiro he attacked was not a Kage Bunshin as well. As soon as the smoke dissipated, Naruto heard claps coming from behind him and he turned to see his Fuden sensei, who in turn was demonstrating an approving smile on his own, considering that Naruto displayed some serious skills. Very impressive, Naruto-kun. That clone of mine took some serious hit. It took a heavy load of my chakra to keep him from vanishing throughout that sequence of yours. I'd correct to assume it's one of your creations? Asked Sojiro, to which Naruto nodded, before focusing chakra once more on the staff to shorten its handle for the blonde to place it inside its holster. Yes, it is, Sojiro-sensei. The original one doesn't involve the Kage Bunshin and it ends on the fourth hit aiming the shoulder. So, now what am I going to learn? Asked Naruto, being all enthused, which earned a smile from his sensei in recognition. Actually, Naruto, there isn't much I can teach you that you couldn't get on your own with time. You may not realize that you've been here for 4 months now and you've learned all 3 forms of Fuden manipulation, said Sojiro, before seeing Naruto's bewildered look of realization that his elemental training is over, but Sojiro wasn't far from being silent. It's with satisfaction that I say you managed to complete the training regimen I set for you, and for that, I believe congratulations are in order. Before you, only one ever managed to finish my training, and that was the Yondaime Kage. Kami has his hunger for power soul right now, smiled Sojiro. I appreciate all the training you gave me, Sojiro-sensei, and I hope to improve my skills to be on your level, or at least hope to cope better with it the next time we spar, smiled Naruto, gaining a nod in recognition from his sensei. Believe me, kid, when I say you won't take long to reach my level. You have an advantage everyone would die for, and that's your chakra abundance. By using the Kage Bunshin experience, you could grow by leaps and bounds and probably become the best wind user in all of the elemental nations. I believe you, above protecting those precious to you, would like to set out a name for yourself, isn't it? Asked Sojiro, before he saw Naruto nod, and he continued. Then, you'll be indeed famous. Learning Fuden element is both time and chakra demanding, but anyone who masters the element is presumed to be feared. You remember reading about the tales of Kazekage Kage Tenshu, didn't you? He quoted that wind element is mostly known for its unpredictability. 1 minute it's blowing west and the other it's on the opposite direction. By being a master of the wind, you can become even more unpredictable than you already are, Naruto, and I feel very proud to be the one helping you become the next Kage Tenshu, smiled Sojiro as he saw the beamed expression on Naruto's face. Arigato, sensei, said Naruto as he bowed in respect to his sensei, before he heard the voice of Jiraiya approaching. Great. You stay with him for 4 months and bow to him in respect. You stay with me for the duration of our trip and you call me a pervert. What happened to the respect? Grumbled Jiraiya, earning a warm laugh from Sojiro, but he soon would have to hold his stomach when Naruto opened his mouth to speak. Why would I call you any differently than what you are, Ero-sensei? You even admit that you're a super pervert, said Naruto, earning a sigh in dismay from Jiraiya as he saw Sojiro on the ground bending over, while holding his stomach from laughing so hard. Okay, all jokes aside, Naruto, since your training is over, I believe we overstated our welcome in Sojiro's house. Go pack your things and tomorrow we'll be leaving, said Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto as he simply walked towards the mansion, thus leaving the two elders alone to talk. So, how many he got this time? Asked Jiraiya, earning a smile from Sojiro as he showed what appeared to be the same disc used to test the strength of the wind affinity. Jiraiya could very well note an increase in the number of cuts than last time. 32 cuts total, simply amazing. No matter if he cheats time with the Kage Bunshin, he's a prodigy and you know it. I don't have to repeat myself more than 2 times when explaining the theory and he managed to achieve everything through practice. It's been an interesting last 4 months that I can say for sure, said Sojiro, to which Jiraiya smiled. With Naruto . After leaving his senseis, Naruto walked calmly towards the mansion. The sun was just setting down and the beautiful orange hue on the sky practically forced a smile on his features. Adding the waterfall on the landscape, it was a picture to be forever kept in his mind. He kind of wished that he wouldn't have to leave so soon. Sojiro-sensei was strict in training, but Naruto could very well see that the man's is as strict as his own drive to be stronger. Also, being acknowledged by such a being was like a boost to Naruto's pride. Nevertheless, he very well knew that for his sake and for Konoha, Naruto needed to become stronger, and as such, he needed much more experience than he gathered since he started his career. He needed to fight against opponents who wouldn't think of holding back in case of an opening like either Sojiro or Jiraiya does. He needed to have a better grasp of the idea of kill or die that every shinobi has to learn throughout his career, and he couldn't learn it here. After arriving at his room, Naruto collected a medium-sized scroll, before opening to review a specific kanji. He, then, placed all his clothes on top of the scroll, including some books he earned from Sojiro to improve on Fuden ninjutsu, before focusing on a single-handed seal. Immediately, when a bunch of clothes and books were now the only thing visible was the same kanji now revolved around some new set of kanjis, meaning that this scroll was already full and therefore unable to use. Just because Jiraiya didn't think to teach him Fuinjutsu, doesn't mean he couldn't teach the very basic knowledge, like how to seal his personal belongings inside a scroll. The pervert thought about teaching how to create explosive tags, but then thought against it. After sealing everything inside the scroll, Naruto laid on his bed and looked at the window as the sun was vanishing little by little and it was almost getting dark outside. However, just as the moon appeared, the effects of the battle ran out and soon fatigue appeared. The boy didn't even hear Sojiro's shouts of calling him for some dinner. The next day . Once everything was all set, Naruto and Jiraiya set food outside Sojiro's house for the first time in 4 months. It felt a bit awkward for both Naruto and Jiraiya to step in the other dimension, and they had to take some time to adjust to this new feeling. While that was weird, said Naruto as he held his head so that it would stop spinning, a sentiment shared by the pervert. You can say that again. Man, I forgot about this rush of traveling dimensions. Now, let's get going, Naruto. There is a village nearby about 10 miles that we can settle and then continue on our next destination, said Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto as they started walking. Although he didn't say anything, though, Jiraiya couldn't help but smile upon seeing the brat walking, a proud smile on his features, before he saw that the blonde was going to ask him something. So Ero-sensei, where are we going now and what will I be learning? Asked Naruto, earning a smile from Jiraiya. Don't worry about that for now, Naruto. After we settle in, we'll take a nice long bath at the onsen, relax a little bit. I've noticed you didn't let your body heal from the heavy strain that Sojiro placed you in, so we're still overdue some relaxation period. Remember, we still have lots of time to learn more techniques and train more, explained Jiraiya, to which Naruto nodded, while looking forward their destination. Sojiro-sensei was sure strict, but in the end, I really managed to learn 10 new techniques that will surely prove useful in the future. I guess you're right, then. Let's relax a bit, said Naruto, before hearing the pervert snort upon hearing what he thought he did. Well, Well, this is a first. Uzumaki Naruto just wanting to pass training for relaxing. The world is at an end, I can see it, dramatized Jiraiya, before smiling in delight upon hearing Naruto grumbling some incoherent curse words aimed at his sensei. What he could say, he just loved to tease with the brat. It didn't take long until they arrived at the village and settled inside an inn which happened to have a vast public onsen for the two to rest their bodies, well in Naruto's case anyway. The pervert let out a sigh in relaxation as he let the hot water relax every muscle of his body, while hanging his arms outside the pool. He, then, looked at Naruto only to see that the blonde was in deep thought once again. Jiraiya didn't like when Naruto did this and it was plainly obvious the reason. Upon being asked, Naruto would always show some level of doubt regarding the idea of relaxing while he could be training instead. Actually, Jiraiya feared that the boy would become too power hungry and immediately set out to talk to the boy, like hearing the boy's thoughts on these troubling subjects. Naruto, tell me what's wrong. You don't seem to be so relaxed, asked Jiraiya, before seeing Naruto taking a glimpse at the pervert from the corner of his eyes, before looking back to the water in dismay. Oh, it's nothing really. I just wish that I would figure out what was wrong with me beforehand, then half the trouble Team 7 went through wouldn't happen. I'm not saying I'm blaming myself for Sasuke's defection, that's his own doing, whether or not he was being subjected to the cursed seal's will. I could have covered more ground at the academy and probably learned every bit of the necessary information, thus leaving space for the more advanced material I should be reading for my age. Things like accuracy, politics, traps, basic taijutsu, basic genjutsu, all of them I've only managed to learn after the whole Sasuke's defection incident, said Naruto, while still looking down, clearly not letting go of his feeling of regret. Jiraiya for his turn at least had the decency to nod while believing that at least this time is different. However, the brat was delusional and he needed to hear a truth or two. Naruto, you better listen intently to what I'm going to say and you better throw that thought of yours away. Maybe, you should have paid more attention at school, maybe not. Anyway, what happened in the past is unchangeable and it won't matter to sulk on it. This feeling of regret you possess is out of line, you can't just hope that things were different in the past. What happened then must remain as such, what you must worry about is the present and the future. You're now managed to cover the entire elemental manipulation training in only 4 months where only Junin level ninja manages to truly master, explained Jiraiya, before he saw Naruto looking at him, listening to what his mentor have to say. Dwelling on the past will only cause you to be bitter and not trustworthy. You want to change, then change for here on out, become the ninja of your dreams and we'll train harder to achieve that dream, said Jiraiya, before smiling upon seeing Naruto smiling as well. One condition, though, brat, if you say this to me once more, you'll be riding on top of Gamabunta, until you learn it the right way, smiled Jiraiya, which in turn earned a nod in acceptance from Naruto. Arigato, sensei, said Naruto, though shockingly as the situation seemed to Jiraiya, he didn't say a word. After an hour and a half, sensei and student were to get some dinner at the only restaurant in town, which made all types of food. Naruto and Jiraiya ordered a sushi special combo that was actually enough for 4 people, but Naruto guaranteed the owner that he would even request more after it was over, which earned a chuckle from Jiraiya. So, Aro-sensei, what's next? Asked Naruto, earning a nod from Jiraiya, since Naruto managed not to do any kind of exercise today. Well, let's see. You managed in 1 year and a half cover taijutsu, bow staff, genjutsu and Fuden ninjutsu. You already learned how to increase the Rasengan and I expect you to keep improving with time. What's left basically, what I can teach you actually, is either the art of sealing called Fuinjutsu or a second ninjutsu element. Of course, you still need to train your Fuden techniques to get adjusted to them and learn how to use them in different scenarios, so we're going to take the remaining of this year for you to cover all these fighting scenarios. The last year will surely be spent with Sweden manipulation, said Jiraiya, earning a questioned look from Naruto. Why Sweden specifically? I know that Kaden and Raiden are out of the picture, since they are heavy offensive elements, but what about Doden manipulation? Asked Naruto, before seeing the sensei smile as the sushi dish was served along with some tea for the two. Indeed, out of the other elements, I was in doubt between Sweden and Doden. However, there is a new concept of ninjutsu nowadays called collaboration jutsus. It consists of two shinobis or, in the rarest cases, one shinobi, performing two techniques that merge with one another, creating a more powerful and more destructive technique. Now, there are certain elements susceptible for the collaboration jutsus. For example, by merging a grand fireball technique with the great breakthrough jutsu, the wind will double the fireball size. Fire jutsus are more suitable because they can merge with Fuden, Doden and Raiden, leaving Sweden of course for obvious reasons. Sweden is the next best for collaboration jutsus, being able to merge with all three except Kaden for the same reasons, with me so far. Asked Jiraiya, before seeing Naruto eat some sushi and nod for the pervert to continue. Your prime affinity is wind and as such, you can use collaboration jutsus with only Sweden, because wind nullifies lightning and it doesn't do anything with earth-based techniques. In the end, if you were to learn collaboration jutsus, the only other element suitable for doing so would be Sweden, explained Jiraiya as he ingested a tuna sushi. I understand, however you said yourself that a collaboration jutsu needs two shinobis. How can I do it on my own? Asked Naruto, earning a nod from Jiraiya, since he was expecting this question. Indeed, in theory, the collaboration jutsu are performed by two shinobis. However, Naruto is one of those rare cases I mentioned before. You do remember how you used Kage Bunshin to train Fuden techniques, didn't you? Then, you do realize that you could use the collaboration jutsu with your own clone, said Jiraiya, before he saw Naruto smile at a new attack possibility, but Jiraiya wasn't finished. Also, because of your wind affinity, your defensive ninjutsu is severely limited to only the K's no Tate technique. With Sweden ninjutsu, you could learn more defensive techniques that could save your life as well as those you protect in the future. So, with all that explained, Sweden is the best element to teach you right now, understood? Asked Jiraiya, to which Naruto nodded as he ingested the last sushi, before calling the waiter to bring in a new set of sushi, to which Jiraiya smiled and asked for some tea as well. A couple miles away from their position Pacing from trees at unimaginable speed and almost out of breath, Azuki Yugao was trying to escape the wrath of what appeared to be two shinobis from the Iwa Anbu forces called Boulder. Another one of her S-ranked suicidal missions headed towards Iwa, where Konoha found suspicious information about a powerful missing nin threatening to border into Fire Country. She along with two other Anbus went to investigate, only for a brutal assault to occur before the Anbu team managed to kill the missing nin. Their price though was too high, as two of Konoha Anbu was killed by the same Boulder Anbu who was supposed to kill the missing nin. Now, although Yugao was being chased for no reason, those Boulder Anbus were maniacs and wouldn't stop at nothing to have a hold of her to kill her, or even worse if one of them decides to have his way with her beforehand. Along the way, she was dodging with the best of her abilities the incoming shurikens and mud balls. However, her chakra was almost entirely used against the missing nin and she didn't have much to use for escape. Also, Konoha was too far away for her to even consider calling for backup. Her alternatives were wearing thin, before she views a small village with maybe 10 or 15 houses for her to hide. However, as soon as Yugao changed her course of action, she cursed the heavens after one single mud ball hit her on her left leg, and because of her immediate pain, she couldn't focus on landing on the next tree, thus following mercilessly on the ground with a heavy thud, before spitting some blood from her mouth. Just as the ninjas landed near her, she knew her time was up. Her legs were heavily bruised because of the Doryu Dango technique and a couple of ribs were broken because of the fall. Not to mention that she was almost out of chakra as she heard one of them talking about what she feared. You've been a very bad girl, you know. And bad girls deserve a punishment, laughed the one from the right, earning a snarl in anger from Yugao who wanted to be killed already. Oh Matsuro, finish her off already. We have to get back to Iowa, said the other, but this Matsuro guy waved him off and kneeled down next to Yugao before he removed the woman's mask. She could see from the guy's face that he enjoyed seeing her angered face and it was plainly obvious that he wouldn't be satisfied until he did the worst deeds to her body possible. However, before Matsuro managed to take her pants off, everyone was stunned to hear some shouting Fuden Repusho, wind release. Gale wind palm jutsu before two focused jets of wind hit Matsuro head-on, thus sending him straight towards his comrade, before both were sent flying. Yugao was at loss of what just happened, before he saw what appeared to be a blonde man jumping in front of her as in protecting her while facing the boulder Anbu. She, then, sensed a hand on her shoulder, before turning her face to see one of the Sanin Jiraiya. Jiraiya-sama, what are you doing here? Asked Yugao, before Jiraiya ushered her to save her strength. Easy there Anbu. I don't know your name, but right now we must get you into safety, said Jiraiya, before he saw Naruto standing against the Anbu members. Ero-sensei, take her away from here, I'll take care of them, said Naruto as he started a large sequence of hand seals. Jiraiya smiled at his student and took Yugao with him back to the village, who by now was unconscious due to chakra exhaustion and utter pain on her legs and ribs. However, she stayed awake long enough to see the blonde preparing for an attack. We're not letting that bitch go, you old geezer, charged Matsuro, until he looked at the blonde in front of him finishing the hand sequence, before whispering the name to the winds. Fuden Saraisu no Tatsumaki, wind release, slicing tornado jutsu. Naruto exhaled a strong gust of wind through his mouth, before it transformed into a huge hurricane and charged against the Anbus who didn't have the time to evade because of the proximity and got hit dead on. Once inside the hurricanes, Matsuro and his partner began receiving multiple slashes from every side, while Naruto took the opportunity to follow Jiraiya to their hotel, not even bothering to see that the ninjas' bodies were like chopped meat sprawled across the forest. The next day The next day, the weather wasn't as nice as the day before. It was raining heavily and Naruto was playing some shugi with Jiraiya, while waiting for the woman to wake up. After placing her on a bed, Jiraiya managed to contact a local doctor who helped cure Yugo's wounds and even wrap the place where she broke her ribs with bandages. Right after arriving at the hotel, Naruto questioned Jiraiya about what happened to her, to which the Sanin could only surmise it as a failed mission. Jiraiya also mentioned that he communicated with Konoha about the female Anbu and received info regarding her status. Also, Naruto heard Jiraiya talking about an order coming from the Hokage ordering the female Anbu to take a long vacation and to remain under Jiraiya's care until he and Naruto returned from the training trip. So, while watching the heavy rain outside, Naruto and Jiraiya were playing shugi, unaware of the fact that Yugao already recovered consciousness. Slowly opening her eyes, her senses became to respond as she managed to hear the sound of rain outside. Immediately, she woke up alarmed fearing that she was captured only to look at an empty room, before she heard the same voice she heard yesterday. Quote, once we brought you in, I found a doctor who took great care of your wounds. You should be fine within a week, smiled Jiraiya, earning a nod from Yugao, while she saw the blonde smiling at her as well. Well, it seems that an appreciation is in order, Uzumaki isn't it? Asked Yugao before Naruto nodded. Uzumaki Naruto is the name and you don't have to thank me. Ero-sensei here sensed the heavy usage of chakra and told us to see what was happening. How are you feeling? Asked Naruto. My ribs still hurts. Excuse me Jiraiya-sama, I need to contact Konoha of my fail, said Yugao, but was interrupted by Jiraiya. No need. I've already contacted Tsunade about your status and she issued an order to you. It's in this scroll, said Jiraiya, before he gave the scroll for the woman to read. Yugao-san, I hear from Jiraiya's intel that you managed to complete the mission you and 2 other Anbus were sent to. He also said that you're badly injured and would have been killed if he and Naruto didn't stop the Anbus. Also, since he didn't see you with the other, I will assume them to be missing in action, until further information. Now, it's came to my attention, that you have participated in all of Konoha's Anbu's suicidal missions and in each one of them you returned with bad bruises and chakra exhaustion. You're one of this village's finest example of what kunoichi should be and as such I cannot afford to lose you. As of right now, I'm issuing a long-term mission and it consists of staying with Naruto and Jiraiya until they are scheduled to return from their training trip in 1.5 years. Godime Hokage. After reading it, Yugao suddenly lost her focus and started looking down to the ground. She received a new mission which didn't involve her sacrificing her life in near-death situations, thus gaining enough time for the old tears and scars of her life to appear once more. She, then, looked at the two. So it appears that we're expending a lot of time together Naruto, Jiraiya-sama. What are we going to do for 1.5 years? Asked Yugao, to which Jiraiya smiled. You are to rest lady, doctor's instructions. We will remain here until you feel ready to walk, after that we're going to see country. There is a place there where I intend to teach Naruto here about Sweden manipulation. For now, though, please get some rest. Our lunch will be brought here, so we don't have to leave the room, said Jiraiya, before he heard the sound of the door knocking and opened for the attendant to leave the lunch on the bedroom table, before leaving, with Jiraiya following. Where are you going, Ero-sensei? Asked Naruto as he got up to check the lunch. Yugao in the meanwhile was wondering about the term Naruto used to address one of the Sannin. One of my spies reached me regarding some news, his place is not so far away from here. Help her eat, okay, said Jiraiya, before closing the door leaving the two alone. Naruto, then, inspected the food and then turned to the Anbu. Well, I don't know if you like these steamy vegetables or not, but Ero-sensei said I have to stop eating ramen and eat some healthy food. I'm sorry but I don't know your name, asked Naruto. Actually, on normal occasions, sharing my identity would ruin my chances of being in Anbu Corps, but considering the situation, I guess it's okay. My name is Azuki Yugao and to answer your first question, I do like steamy vegetables, but I'm afraid you'll have to help me, just by lifting my arm, my ribs hurts, said Yugao, but something about this whole ordeal pissed her off. The reason was that she was kind of a self-reliant person. Naruto, though, didn't seem to mind as he grabbed the dish and one hashi to feed her. As he sat down next to her, Yugao turned to address him. I was kind of curious about how you address Jiraiya-sama, asked Yugao, before seeing Naruto leave out a little laugh. Oh come on, I'm sure you've been to one of Konoha's onsens before, right? There isn't a single woman in the elemental nations that wasn't piqued by the almighty Gamma Sennin. That's the reason for his nickname. Plus, it's nice to see his face after I call him that, laughed Naruto while grabbing a broccolis and positioning for Yugao to eat it, to which she smiled and ate the vegetable. Yugao found it strange about this feeling of peace she felt upon seeing him laugh and also understood why Naruto called Jiraiya like that, from all the times she had to leave the onsen because of the man peeping at the women. So, what can you tell me about the Anbu? I heard from Ero-sensei that they are the elite of shinobi in Konoha, so one must be really good to join the rank isn't it? Asked Naruto, earning a nod from Yugao as she accepted another broccoli, before swallowing. Well, You have to be at least Junin to join our ranks, and even so, it's necessary to have complementary skills that make you different from the rest. Are you interested? Asked Yugao, before seeing Naruto nod, but with some reluctance as expected from everyone. I don't know, I'm still a genin and probably won't be a chunin until I come back from this trip. It'll take even more time for me to be a junin, said Naruto as he grabbed one of the broccolis and ingested it before he offered one for the woman, who gladly accepted and ate it. Suddenly, one memory hit her and she realized Naruto was facing two Anbu shinobi on his own. It was very impressive you taking on those Anbus. Before going unconscious, I noticed the Fuden jutsu you used to save me, stated Yugao, before seeing Naruto blush in appraisal. After all, it was the first time a woman praised him for his abilities and not smash him in the head like Sakura did. Well, Fuden, it's my prime affinity and I know wide-scale jutsus that leaves the enemy no alternative but face it head-on and hope to survive. Those Anbu sure didn't. I have a question, though. Konoha's policy is about teamwork, but you're alone against those two. What happened to your team? Asked Naruto, but the lost look on Yugo's face told him everything and he feared something back happened. Two other Anbu members were sent along with me for what we advanced shinobi calls suicidal missions. We managed to defeat an A-ranked missing nin that was trying to enter Fire Country. However, those Anbus from Iowa wanted to kill the man, hence why they killed my two comrades. I didn't have enough chakra, so I fled, and that's where you and Jiraiya-sama found me, explained Yugao, earning a nod from Naruto as he finished his plate and then placed at the table. I never lost a comrade, so I don't know what's like. I'm really sorry, though, for what happened. Were they close to you? Asked Naruto, before seeing Yugao negate with her head. No, they weren't, at least not more than colleagues, said Yugao, but stopped while unable to form the words to express that they died in the line of their duty. Ever since her fiancé's death, she has been throwing her life at risk so that she would forget the immeasurable pain that fills her heart every day, but while she wanted nothing more than this, she didn't want people to go down with her if such a thing occurred. For some unknown reason, every time she has been close to death, but never she walked towards the light to finally meet her dead boyfriend once more. You don't need to explain it to me. Ah, do you want anything else? I see the rain is already subsiding, so I'll prepare for my bow staff exercise routine, said Naruto. Well, resting doesn't really suits me any good, so you could help me get up and take me with you, smiled Yugao, earning a nod from Naruto as he made a familiar hand seal, before two cage bunchins appeared next to Yugao, before helping her get up and go outside. Yugao was surprised with the usage of cage bunchin, but didn't say anything. Upon arriving at a clear which happened to be the hotel garden, Naruto's clones helped Yugao to sit on a bench nearby, before being dispelled as she got to watch Naruto pick his weapon, before initiating his dance against the imaginary opponents. While watching the martial arts showdown, Yugao just felt the need to smile as the scenery before her. After the run stopped, the sun's power opened the skies and forced his sunlight to illuminate the once clouded day. Also, since Naruto's hair was that golden blonde, the sunlight actually increased the color tone to a point that Yugao wondered if it was shining. Also, she could see the smile displayed on his face as he went through some really advanced katas of the bow staff style peculiar to the Sarutobi clan. In fact, any shinobi who wanted to explore the use of weapons in order to use it as an extension of the body must practice daily to a point that using it becomes second nature, and Yugao was surprised to see a person so focused, besides herself, and for all her might, she couldn't finish her train of thought. Her heart hurt immediately, thus preventing her from comparing Naruto's drive to become better with the weapon in a similar way to her deceased fiancé. She was so engrossed in this train of thought, that she didn't realize a new presence has just arrived. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? You know, the Sandame was my sensei, and not once did I see this level of dedication regarding the bow staff style. I guess Naruto has taken a liking to it, said Jiraiya as he took a seat next to the momentarily surprised woman, before he spoke again. I thought I told that you needed to rest, didn't I? Asked Jiraiya, earning a nod from Yugao before she looked back at Naruto, who just finished one advanced move that consisted of him extending the staff over his shoulder while extending his arms, holding it and swirling his body, taking as many enemies as possible with it. I don't appreciate resting in a room for one whole week. Besides, this is not the first time I'm in this situation, said Yugao, to which Jiraiya nodded. I know that. I've confirmed with my old teammate about your status. Azuki Yugao, Anbu captain level shinobi with an impressive record of successful missions, only losing to former Anbu captains Uchiha Itachi and Hatake Kakashi. Was soon to be married with Tokubetsu Junin Gecko Hayate, but he was lost during the Sand Sound invasion. Ever since, you've went to one suicidal missions after another, barely escaping out alive in probably the majority of them, reported Jiraiya, but he stopped when he saw the foregoing look on her face, before he switched to Naruto, who was still practicing. I somehow knew that you didn't go for some information, instead you asked for my file. As to why, I wonder. What business you have with my life and what missions I do take? With all due respect, Jiraiya-sama, you don't have the authority to, said Yugao, but stopped from fear of overstepping her boundaries, but Jiraiya only smiled and landed a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry if I intruded in your life like this, but I needed to know a thing or two about you, because of Naruto, stated Jiraiya. If you're asking whether or not I hate him for the Kyuubi, all you had to do was ask. And no, I don't hate him, I never did. I was merely a child at the time and my parents were samurais on the moment of joining Konoha. No one precious to me died because of him, and if it did, I'd know the difference between the fox demon and the one who keeps it jailed. But there is more to it, isn't it? This mission isn't only for training him, asked Yugao, before she saw the pervert nod in positive with his head. Since you're in Anbu, I'm sure you heard of this new Akatsuki organization? Asked Jiraiya, before Yugao nodded, and he continued. They consist of S-ranked missing nins from all the hidden villages with the purpose of collecting the tailed demons, and Uchiha Itachi happens to be one of their members, along with former member of the Swordsmen of the Mist Hoshikage Kisame. Both extremely powerful shinobis, being on par with my skills, and they happen to be the ones after Naruto in order to get the beast from within his stomach. This mission is both for his training and his protection against the Akatsuki. So, I saw your file in order to assess your skills in helping both with his protection and his training. I understood you have a prime affinity for Sweden and you're one of Konoha's top weapon user, which makes you perfect for teach him improve, explained Jiraiya, to which Yugao nodded. Well, seeing as I'm here with you two for the duration of this trip, I might as well do something. However, if Akatsuki appears, I won't be much help against them, stated Yugao. You won't need to actually. They won't attack him with me around. Last time, they tried luring me away from Naruto so that they could move in for the capture. However, in case they manage to find us and move in for a fight, I'll hold Itachi, since he's the most dangerous one. You'll pair with Naruto against Kisame. With the brat's long-scale jutsus, he can use it to escape, and I would follow shortly afterwards with my Toad ninjutsu, explained Jiraiya, earning a nod from Yugao while she was watching Naruto now switching to Fuden practice as he began to control the wind to swirl around his body. Suddenly, just as Naruto switched to a different hand seal, the once small gust of wind transformed into a hurricane, before the blonde relinquished his control and the once gathered wind was dispersed through the air. I have a feeling, though, that in a few years' time, he will be a force not to be trifled with. I'm still dazzled by his control over the wind element, said Yugao, to which Jiraiya nodded. Even though I say he has the skills of a Chunin, inside I know that he's stronger than a low-level Junin. By the time we come back, he'll be strong enough to give the Akatsuki a run for their money, stated Jiraiya, as the scene shifted to Naruto once again focusing the wind around him, but now for a different hand seal as suddenly a strong gust of wind was sent forward, but with not so much chakra, but more control, so as not to damage the hotel garden. While watching, Yugao couldn't help but think about her next year and a half and how much of an influence will Naruto leave on her, if what she felt earlier was any indication. 1 week later 1 week later, the group composed of a Sanin, an Anbu captain and a Genin, set out for their next destination. Yugao did let go of the Anbu clothes, since it would be too inconspicuous to walk around wearing that without her mask, and she purchased a new set of clothes, consisting of black cargo paints, a new pair of gray boots, and a fishnet shirt covered with a Junin-style vest. During the course of the week, she and Naruto managed to form a nice level of bonding, sharing conversations about people they know, shinobi skills, and even some gossip about her ex-Anbu captain and Naruto's Junin sensei, who actually were the same person. While sharing those conversations, Yugao found strange that Naruto managed to maintain a decent level of conversation with her, because she knew that those of his age usually focused on more trivial manner. Naruto explained to her about some aspects of his life, albeit not the darkest part, but just a glimpse of it, which urged him to learn things that he wouldn't have to, until the right moment, thus getting a nod from Yugao in understanding. After all, growing up alone and without assistance was tough for anyone. To top that, he was also hated for something he didn't do. Naruto also told some aspects of his training, even the part about him learning what was like to take a man's life, even though he was already beaten, to which Yugao nodded in understanding, since it's a very important fear all shinobi have and can lead to unexpected surprises if one couldn't find it in his right mind to do what was needed. The last member of the group actually remained distant throughout the week, only watching with a smirk the interaction between Naruto and Yugao. He knew from Tsunade regarding the reasons for her choice in performing suicidal missions, but after a week of bonding, he could very well see that Naruto was indeed having an impact in her way of thinking. After all, because of what Naruto went through, he could socialize and maybe even understand others' pain better than anybody else, hence why the pervert believed that Naruto could be the one to wake her from her fiancé's loss. Suddenly, though, the perverted mind of his clicked at the possibility of a new bestseller as he grabbed his little notebook and began scribbling a few ideas. By seeing this, though, Naruto had the decency to sigh in dismay and explain to Yugao that sometimes he have some sort of breakthrough about a new idea for his porn, and then he begins to write things while giggling like a fangirl upon seeing an Uchiha. Snorting in realization of that damn book, Yugao couldn't help but shiver at the possibility of her being a character in this new book of his, a thought surprisingly shared by Naruto as they walked towards the place where Naruto would learn Suiton manipulation and better improve his wind techniques.